we can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity. Is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else, or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random, and you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something further inside your mind or inside your brain or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, if that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action.
Alex O'Connor tells us that not only does free will not exist, free will cannot exist. It's impossible, like a square circle. His argument is basically that all causes break down into two kinds of causes. A thing is either determined or indeterminate. If it's determined, that means it's entirely caused by other things, so that excludes free will. But if it's indeterminate, that just means it's random, so that's not free will either. So free will cannot exist. Here's where he goes wrong. To start off, I can understand where he's coming from. I think in Alex's mind, the universe is deterministic. It's like a table full of billiard balls where atoms are just knocking around and bumping into each other. That's all we are. That's all our brains are. We are just matter in motion, and free will doesn't fit into that picture. But I think he's missing a few things. First of all, let me just explain what I mean by free will. I think free will, in the libertarian sense, means that you are the first cause of your choices. I accept Alex's distinction of all things into two kind of categories, indeterminacy and determinacy, but I like to use different words for that. I like to say that things are either caused or they are a first cause. Now, first causes are a little bit weird to reason about. I like to use the example of God. I'm a theist. I believe that God is the first cause of all things. I think it's reasonable to believe in first causes still, whether you're a theist or not. I think something had to start this whole thing. By definition, it's nonsensical to ask what caused the first cause. It's a first cause. It's the first thing in the chain of events. It makes no sense to ask what came before it. So when we ask, why did God choose to create the universe rather than not create the universe? A lot of theologians would say, well, God is in his own free will the first cause of that choice. There's no sense in asking what caused him to make a choice. The choice is the first cause. In the same way, I believe that humans have the same kind of free will in a limited sense, in that we are the first causes of our own choices. When Alex says that free will is random, I think that gives the impression that something other than me is making the choice. If you were to say to me, all your choices are random, that seems to indicate to me that it's almost as if I'm a robot and there's a monkey somewhere with the remote control to my brain and is bashing the buttons and making me do random things. Or you might imagine that the cells in my brain are like little poker players sitting around a table rolling dice and making me do things as a result of the dice rolls. In either case, it's not me making the choices. But the important thing here is that in my understanding of free will, I am the indeterminate thing, or the first cause. I really don't like the word indeterminacy because it's a negative word. It just means not determined. But what is it then? It's a first cause. So I am the first cause of my choices, and not something else. Not some other random cause outside of myself. It's I myself that I'm the first cause, causing the choice to go one way rather than another. It's helpful here to think of the illustration of the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible. In the story, Adam eats the forbidden fruit, and when God asks him, why did you do this? He blames his wife. He says, well, it's because she offered me the fruit, so she's to blame. We all recognize this as a cop-out. The real answer as to why Adam ate the fruit is simply that he chose to. He is the first cause of his own choice. Sure, there were other factors that went into it, but ultimately, he had the ability to choose to go one way rather than another because he is, in his will, a first cause. I think more generally, we can just say that the idea of human responsibility only makes sense if we believe that we have free will. In other words, we are the first cause of those choices. It would make no sense in a murder case to put the gun on trial or put the bullet on trial and ask it why it fired out of the barrel when the trigger was pulled. It had no choice. It had no free will. The fact that we hold people responsible for things, I think, is very indicative and only makes sense in a worldview where you understand that free will does exist. I think the other thing that's a point of confusion is just this idea of randomness. When it comes to, again, first causes, it can be very tricky to reason about. And Alex says, well, this just means it's just random. Because when it comes to a first cause, you can't say why that first cause is doing one thing rather than another, right? Because it's a first cause. But I think it's very sloppy to just label that randomness. Let me use a couple of examples where I think that even randomness is not always random. As a very simple example, let's imagine we flip 1 million coins. How many of those will land heads? You might say, well, just a completely random number of them will land heads because each individual coin flip is random, right? No. Almost exactly 1/2 of those coins will land heads. How did I know that if each individual coin flip is just random? Well, that's one of the paradoxes of randomness, is that you can arrange random things in such a way that the ultimate result is something less than random. A more complex example might be the example of image generating AI. Many of you may have seen these AIs where you can type in a caption and it generates an image. You'll also notice that if you type in the same caption again, you'll get a different image. That's because the AI algorithm at the base is using a random number generator as a starting point for its image generation that makes sure each image is completely unique. Imagine you had a friend that had never seen an AI like this before, and you were demonstrating, and you typed in the caption, "a monk snowboarding." And your friend asked you, what kind of image am I about to see? And you responded by saying, you're going to see a completely random image. All the pixels just random. Would that be an appropriate response? No. You're not going to see a completely random image. You are going to see some kind of image of a monk snowboarding. Why is that? Because the randomness that is the starting point of the AI image generation is going to be arranged in a certain way such that it will actually look like a monk snowboarding. The randomness is very, very, very structured to such a degree that it's really no longer appropriate to call it randomness or completely random. In fact, these AIs are really just designed in that way to mimic human creativity. I think this can help us reason about how to think about free will. In free will, I am the first cause of my choice, but that doesn't mean my choice is completely random or it could be anything. It's structured in a particular way that is connected to me and who I am. Say I am going to eat a cereal for breakfast and I'm choosing between cereal A and cereal B. There might be all kinds of other choices I could have made for what to eat that morning. I could have eaten the gravel outside. I could have eaten the drywall. I could have taken a bite out of my own arm. All of those choices are off the table. That's because my choice is structured in a certain way. It's not just random in the same way that when you type in the words, "a monk snowboarding" to the AI image generator, it's going to draw you a picture that's going to be structured in a certain way. Now there's creativity going on there, creativity simulated, but you get the point. I think with us humans, we as the first cause get to choose what the outcome of our own choices is going to be, but those are structured in a certain way. Those are structured according to our reason, according to our circumstances, according to our own personalities, and so on. I think that removes it being reasonable to simply call our actions random. And again, I think calling them random gives us the wrong impression that it's not me making the choice. It's not me as a first cause. I think this explains why I believe that free will is a coherent idea. Sure, you can believe that it doesn't exist, but it certainly doesn't mean that it's illogical or incoherent. Thanks for listening. See you guys again next time.